I think as we get closer here to the draft, the information comes out, and certainly the believability of it all probably leaves a lot to be desired. Well, we still got 2 more weeks, but we're going to talk about it anyway. Browns 3D starts now. Welcome back, my friends, to the show that never ends, your daily delivery of all things Dog Pound. Browns 3D on the OBR is brought to you by State Sharpening Mower Sales and Service. Your host, Jeff Lloyd, and we appreciate all of you for all the feedback, the reading, being here for us, whether it's the written content, of course, the nightly streaming here on the OBR. Make sure you subscribe to the OBR on YouTube, and of course, over on Twitch as well. About 15 days out now from the 2025 NFL draft. And I know many of you are still getting tired of the draft talk, and there's times maybe where it's getting a little bit much for me, but yes, still highly, highly enjoying all of it for so many years, being a bystander to the NFL draft for the Cleveland Browns the last few seasons. Obviously, it's safe to say that, it's pretty much cut and dry right now that the Browns selection would go one of two ways, either Travis Hunter or Abdul Carter. Certainly a possibility, of them maybe moving out of the pick. But it would not be far, at all. If you were a draft fan, you should certainly know about Dane Brugler, and Dane Brugler dropped the beast today. Probably the most comprehensive draft guide there is today. And it's definitely done with a different layout this year. I mean, just really, really great. I mean, I only got to thumb through it for a little while. Really picked up some great information. But the other thing is you realize you're just scratching the surface. One of the things I did pick up out of that, Abdul Carter, 6'6" wingspan. And what that means in regards to Carter, and basically what a lot of his naysayers seem to be throwing our way is undersized. Well, has with 6'6" at 21, 6'6" wingspan at the age of 21 years old, will play almost the entirety of his rookie season at 21 years old. This is a player that's probably going to be 265 probably when it's all said and done. I'm not talking about by camp. I'm not talking about his rookie year. But by probably year 2 to year 3, you're talking about a player that's going to be north of 260 pounds. And, of course, still with all of that, ridiculous athleticism and agility, just fun player. Now, every time, I mention that, I would like to take Carter with the number 2 overall selection, I get obviously met with the, brushback in favor of Travis Hunter, which, again, Travis Hunter is a fantastic player. Now, everybody brings up the Cleveland Browns' lack of ability to score points last year. Certainly true. Several factors there that you believe should help that. Hopefully improved offensive line play. Hopefully some semblance of a running game. Again, one of the questions, though, certainly would be quarterback. And then again, that is just one of my issues. And it's not so much an issue on Hunter as it is an issue of drafting a wide receiver at 2. The Browns they kind of did luck into this position of drafting number 2, but I'm saying they didn't luck into this position where they already had an established quarterback who, say, went down week 1 of 2024. And now all of a sudden, here you are sitting at 2 with your quarterback in tow, and you're able to say, hey, this is that final weapon the offense needs. The offense needs just about everything. We know they need quarterback play. We know they need running back play. We know they need wide receiver play. We know they need tight end play, and they certainly need offensive line play. Everything. When there are that many needs on one side of the ball, there is just no belief that the Browns can resolve all of their issues on the offensive side of the ball in one draft. They just can't do it. And that would be with ignoring the defense. And I've given you guys my path of taking Carter this year, take all the remaining top picks this year, use them to address the offense. If you have to take all the top picks again in 2026 and use them on offense, I understand. There is not one player that you can select at number 2 overall that can make or help make the jump from the offense being essentially the absolute worst in the NFL last season to the point where, they break the top 20 or they break the top 15. It's just not feasible. But if I were to draft Abdul Carter at number 2 overall, there is a legit and probably a certainty that the Cleveland Browns defense could get back into the top 10. Why do I keep saying top 10? The top 10 defenses in the NFL last year, 9 of those teams went to the playoffs. So I am not ignoring the offense by any means whatsoever, but I am looking at what is the easiest and most logical path to give at least one unit a significant uptick. And for me, that still lies with Carter. Again, no idea where this is going to play out in 2 weeks from now. Certainly, a lot to happen between now and then. Now, the idea of Hunter is alluring, and I am going to say that if there's any outlet whatsoever who covers the Cleveland Browns and are talking about Travis Hunter as a cornerback, I really got to question what you guys are doing. Okay? You've been told flat out by the general manager numerous times that they view him as a wide receiver. Hence the interest. Cornerbacks do not go number 2 overall in the draft. It's very rare that wide receivers do. It's even more rare that cornerbacks would go high in the NFL draft. So that notion just holds no water, especially when the Browns cornerback room certainly already consists of Denzel Ward, a player that was extended by this front office, Martin Emerson, Greg Newsome, both drafted by this front office, Cameron Mitchell, and last year's rookie as well. So I mean, the top 5 corners on the Cleveland Browns roster, Miles Harden. The top 5 corners on the Cleveland Browns roster were either extended by this regime or drafted by this regime. So to believe or talk about Travis Hunter in any way whatsoever as a corner just seems foolish at this point. It just literally seems foolish, and especially with a team and a defense that is led by Jim Schwartz, and Jim Schwartz basically has told us all he cares more about the pass rush than he does about the coverage. A lot of man, a lot of cover 3, a lot of facing the receivers, cornerback face to the receiver, a lot of opportunity for them to make plays on the ball, play on the man. But all of that is predicated on the fact that Jim Schwartz hopes that the ball never even gets out of the quarterback's hands, or it never even gets thrown into coverage, gets thrown away, gets batted down, or the quarterback eats dirt. So to have some people this late in the process trying to discuss Travis Hunter and discuss Travis Hunter as a cornerback possibility for the Cleveland Browns. I mean, if you just like Travis Hunter, that's fine. But the conversation is whether or not you were drafting Travis Hunter, the wide receiver, or Abdul Carter, the pass rusher. There is no conversation about the Cleveland Browns drafting a corner high, let alone number 2 overall. Let alone number 2 overall. You want to talk about people losing their jobs, that is something you would certainly lose your job over. Now, for Hunter, and, the comparisons certainly are there. The Justin Jeffersons. I've seen Jamar Chase. I think that's a little rich for my blood. Even Justin Jefferson's a little rich for my blood. I mean, and that's what happens sometimes with comparisons. Basically, you can either give a player comp on to what you think the player was like coming out of school, or you give a comparison on what you think the player can become within the league. And, look, Justin Jefferson is a high compliment. And I'm not saying Travis Hunter isn't worth it. I just generally don't like player comps that are that high, because it feels like you just, you've put so much pressure, or you've built up the expectation for said player so much that it just puts everybody in a really, really difficult spot. If the guy doesn't hit that level, he can still be a great player and maybe not be Justin Jefferson. The same thing can be said for Abdul Carter. Expectations, can get a little, player comparisons can get a little out of hand. But, the thing for me with Abdul Carter is, I see Abdul Carter come around that corner, and I see the physicality and the quickness and the ferociousness of him hitting people behind the line of scrimmage. And it kind of gives me some Lawrence Taylor vibes. And then, more recent memory, Sean Merriman vibes, coming around that corner with bad intentions, making things happen, wrecking, knocking people around, knocking balls loose. I think Carter has that ability. But I would say 2 weeks out, I think we know pretty firmly the Cleveland Browns selection at number 2 overall is either going to be Travis Hunter or it is going to be, of course, Abdul Carter out of Penn State. Browns 3D will continue on. Everybody, stick around. I'm excited to introduce. We've had the partnership now, and they've just been fantastic. And we're certainly appreciative of them joining us here for the draft run, State Sharpening Mower Sales and Service in Broadview Heights. If you were local to the Cleveland area, they are your one-stop shop for all things lawn equipment. Listen, you want to spend your Sundays watching the Browns, not cutting your grass. Let the guys at State help you get your weekend back. They specialize in both residential and commercial equipment for Toro. The brand professionals have counted on for more than 100 years. Whether you're looking for a new, dependable time cutter, zero turn, genuine Toro replacement parts, or expert service from experienced technicians who keep your mower in peak condition, State has got your back. They are veteran owned. The Kane family are lifetime Clevelanders. They are lifetime Browns fans and proud supporters of us here at the OBR. So, if you are local to the Cleveland area, check out State Sharpening Mower Sales and Service in Broadview Heights. They are your hometown team for all your lawn equipment needs. All their info is at statesharp.com. That is STATESHARP.com. Browns 3D continues. Your host, Jeff Lloyd. As always, we appreciate everybody for all the support here over at the OBR. Some of the information is starting to come out. So it looks like, certainly combine rechecks are on the case. Shamar Turner, I believe it was January 28th, was diagnosed with a stress fracture in his foot. Now has been basically given a clear bill of health, which has got him to do, he's starting to do some top 30 visits here. There is some belief that maybe the Cleveland Browns have interest, which certainly brings me back to another point relevant to the Cleveland Browns. They seem to have a lot of interest, and these top 30 visits are sometimes usually more amped up than they should be. And when I say that, it is with the thought process that it's not so much, a direct correlation to a player ending up with the team. There could have been things that changed with the player between the time the team had originally met with them. Say it was the Senior Bowl, didn't necessarily cross paths with them at the combine. There could be, some fine tuning, or, there could be with some players, with rumors attached to them. Hey, let's get him into the building. This way it's not, such a quick, brief visit. If there was an issue we have off field, this, that, or the other thing, we can kind of get him in a more comfortable situation where maybe the player's a little bit more apt to open up about it and explain whatever the situation was, through his eyes, through his, dealing with what went down. So, the top 30 visits certainly get a lot of hype. But, it is difficult sometimes to read and understand just how much it actually matters. Browns have met with a bunch of defensive tackles to this point, a lot of them. Certainly a couple of top ones in the game. Certainly an interesting one. And, Deontay Walker, who certainly, has been a well-traveled guy in the last 5-6 years between constantly bouncing around in high schools, transferred obviously in college. We can't really hold that against anybody nowadays. It seems everybody transfers in college nowadays. But Browns certainly have met with a lot of defensive tackles. Have met now with 5 quarterbacks have been to the building in Berea. So there is a lot here with that as well. But if you were to take anything away from all these top 30 visits the Cleveland Browns have been doing, it's not like any of these names have really been low. You know what I'm saying? Almost all of these players that are coming in have probably been top 100, certainly if not higher caliber prospects. So it tells you and it shows you the Browns, really, really are focusing, certainly where they stand now, 5 picks in the top 104 of this draft class, understanding that, there's a real opportunity for them, hopefully, and it's going to be needed, is for them to be able to do some serious, damage here and start to fill in some of the holes on this roster that have been here, and kind of fill in and replenish the talent that was lost through all of the draft capital that was used, certainly, 3 years ago in the acquisition of Deshaun Watson. Now you get to picks 33, and for 33, I think a lot of this really looks and just seems like this is the area for the quarterback, and it maybe not necessarily is pick 33. Certainly a lot of thought and belief that it could be the situation where they, have to trade up from 33, and certainly several avenues for that. The fifth-year option that everybody talks about, that is legitimate, that is real. One of the biggest things and why teams value that certainly is if this is a player and a quarterback especially that you are not drafting in the first couple of selections, you want to have that extra year because you understand that it may take a little while for the player, if he's going to hit, to in fact hit. This is why end of round one has always been such a sweet spot for all these years for teams trying and looking for a quarterback. Now, when this whole process started, I believe everybody felt that there was maybe just two quarterbacks that were going to go in the first round. Then it went from two quarterbacks who were potentially guys in play to go number one overall. Now it's to the point where maybe, is one quarterback at one, which is certainly established. And then maybe the next one doesn't go till maybe the Saints at 9. And then if they don't go to New Orleans, it gets really tricky after that. Pittsburgh certainly connected to maybe a quarterback here. The Aaron Rodgers thing in play there. And, we all know the way Aaron Rodgers is. Aaron Rodgers isn't certainly coming to tutor anybody. Aaron Rodgers is coming in to be Aaron Rodgers. But, to get up into that late part of round one, now the question is how much are you going to sacrifice, because if it's you're trading up and it's 67, all of a sudden what was the prime picks here for the Browns certainly have dried up quickly, and you go from 5 to the top 104 to now maybe 4, but you had 2 within the top 33. And then now you're talking about 94 and 104. And so all of a sudden, what looked like the ability to have this nice haul in these first 5 selections, all of a sudden it kind of was fool's gold. When you do this, you trade up, and whatever moves through there, you end up certainly with a lot of less bang for your buck. Again, though, if you get the quarterback and the quarterback hits, nobody is ever going to care. That's how important certainly the position is. The running back position, and I've said, for a while now, I think the top end of this is fantastic, but I think every part of this class is fantastic. The top tier, middle tier, lower tier, whether it's day 1, whether it's day 2, whether it's day 3. The Browns have certainly a huge need at the running back position. But I do believe, and I think, again, Nick Chubb is probably going to return. But the thing is the need at wide receiver, certainly, and maybe even tight end. And, for wide receiver, it's just a more shallow class. And there's just no way around that. The class is just more shallow at the wide receiver position. So, if there is a guy you have targeted, you can't, there's no way you probably have 3 or 4 others. The running back class is certainly going to be a lot different. And I think that's why you look at day 3 for this running back class, and you really believe that is where certainly the opportunity is for your team to get better. Certainly the opportunity there for your team to improve themselves, and obviously just get some playmakers certainly, involved into the building. And there's a lot of quality guys available for day 3. And the Browns right now for the running back room need to strengthen numbers. And I truly believe under the analytic profile, the running back room for the Browns it's not going to be, a Nick Chubb and, he only comes out when he needs a blow. It's going to be a full and true, probably running back by committee approach. The reason the analytics like it is because you can end up paying 3 running backs less than what you pay 1 running back. Also, God forbid, when you get an injury, you should not be impacted as significantly as if you lose your main horse, like the Browns had been in a couple of years without Nick Chubb. Now, wide receiver, it was weird because remember everybody was trying to float that Brandon Ayuk thing, and I don't know what came of that, but it doesn't seem like much came of that at all. They've certainly met with Travis Hunter. They've certainly had Isaiah Bond in here. Isaiah Bond, one of the faster wide receivers in this class. Now, don't necessarily know, if he translates that well to coming to the AFC North. But again, though, now a meeting, and now back to when we were talking about the top 30s, a meeting with like Isaiah Bond could certainly be in relation to, it's come out recently that, there's a lot of, questions about Bond, certainly. And I believe one of the players he was compared to in his off field was Jermaine Burton from last season, who ended up having a real rookie season with the Cincinnati Bengals. So Bond could have been the perfect type top 30 meeting, where it was more about, getting a little bit more under the hood, so to speak, trying to find exactly, maybe just what went wrong for the young man, or, what his issues exactly were, and trying to have him explain it to you in his own words. So, again, I mean, the needs are endless. The tight end position, I'm very, very excited. Certainly Mason Taylor's top 30 visit. Certainly Arroyo is certainly a top 30 visit. Harold Fannin is going to be a visit. I think Fannin could be really, really interesting for Cleveland, because you could do some fullbacky stuff with him. You could certainly line him up, off of David Njoku's hip. The receiving ability speaks for itself, even though if the athleticism is not elite. Certainly Fannin has played some decent competition, had a great game in the Southeast Conference last year where he was just an absolute monster. There's just so much to do on the offensive side of the ball. I just don't see the realistic path for the Browns correcting it all in one draft. And again, I thought, and I think we all thought, a little bit more was going to be done during free agency. So that way, maybe you could have this theory or this premise that most of it was, basically juiced up in one off season through, certainly free agency, possible trades, and of course through the draft. It's just not the approach the Browns have taken to this point, and where this roster sits now, 2 weeks before the draft. Like I said, and we've said it a million times, right? To this point, you need 3 quarterbacks. To this point, you need 2 to 3 running backs. To this point, you need 1, if not 2 wide receivers, 2 tight ends. Everybody wants a, developmental offensive tackle. All of these things, that's fine, but that's pretty much your 10 picks right there. And that's not even factoring in on all of them hitting. That's before you've even addressed anything on defense. And look, all I'm asking for is 1. I don't need anything else. Just give me that 1 first pick on defense, and I will shut my mouth and let you do everything you need to do for the offense from that point on. Defensively, and they did sign the safety, came into the league old, 29 years old already. There's not much to believe there as far as what he can bring to the team or what your expectations are for him. Core special teamer, is he just a roster filler at this point? There's a million ways to look at this, and I don't think many of them are certainly, overall that positive. But the Browns just have to keep going at it, and just the work has to be improved on that side of the ball as well. I think there's a lot of misconceptions, that people feel that if the offense just played better last year, it would have certainly helped the defense, would have, had them off the field less, would have had them more well-rested. And certainly all of that is true. But the 2024 defense just did not play on par with the 2023 defense. And you look and you understand, but I mean, all of this should be about improving all phases, I should say, of the game. And, everybody, with the defensive end position, look, obviously you have the top edge talent in the entire planet, and that's fine. But for years, the Browns have always tried to have, if you want to call it, a name, whether it was Clowney, certainly, whether it was Zadarius Smith, in a pairing, certainly with Myles Garrett. You have 4 defensive ends on your roster right now, combined for 10 sacks last year, who are not named Myles Garrett. So yes, I understand and I get it, but you got to get something more out of that. You're going to need something more. And that is, for one of the reasons for me where, I don't want to be short ever on the pass rush position. You still certainly have to look at the safety position. Certainly not much there whatsoever at all. Corner, I'm not saying I'm fine. And the infinity for defensive backs, that this regime has shown, you definitely believe, they're always in the defensive back game. That's what happens when you're led by a former defensive back and you're coached by a former defensive back. So there's just tons still going on here. You try to look around the AFC North and kind of maybe try to read the tea leaves. Pittsburgh right now, certainly in a similar situation on the Browns, sitting there with basically just Mason Rudolph back on the roster, but a lot of questions certainly at the quarterback position for them. Did do the second wide receiver in bringing in DK Metcalf. So Metcalf and Pickens together is certainly, a combustible duo for them. The Bengals, all the effort that was put in and finally done to get the Burrow, Chase, Higgins trio to continue, but still no closer to any answer with Trey Hendrickson, which certainly was the big, if not only, chip playmaker for that Bengals defense. That's certainly a work in progress, similar, and it kind of would be, not similar, opposite, to what the Browns are, whereas, the defense was pretty good. The offense couldn't do anything. For Cincinnati, it's going to be the offense is good. The defense can't do anything, one of those types of things. Baltimore, Baltimore's just going to do what Baltimore does, obviously. A unit that, the Zay Flowers thing, I think was really, really a very, very strong addition for them last year. This year, my guess is to be somewhat probably defense related. They've been in this little bit of run the last couple of years where they're just throwing a lot of money at free agents, and sometimes it's been older free agents. And the actuality is the older free agents, the Kyle Van Noys of the world, have been the ones that have actually been panning out a little bit better for them than, say, maybe, a contract to, free safety Marcus Williams. But you always certainly want to, keep your eyes, and kind of watch what's going on here. Certainly, within your division and teams that you're going to certainly have to play twice in each and every season here. And again, at the end of the day, your first goal should be trying to win your division. So it sets up everything else. I'm not sure Cleveland is there just yet, but certainly that is your goal, is to get into your division, compete in your division, and ultimately win your division. So it's getting close. Times it feels like tomorrow. Times it does feel like it is absolutely a month away. But there is a lot that needs to be done. And, again, I really thought the activity level in free agency up into the draft from the Cleveland Browns would, yield more turnover. I thought there'd, be more done. But again, just an off year. As much as it is for, the Browns getting that number 2 selection, unfortunately, there's just no real quarterback option there. For what the Browns' needs kind of are or were going into the offseason, nothing really correlated. The wide receiver market, that was last year. Tight end market, the great ones usually are never available. Running back market, you're not going to pay a free agent running back this offseason with a ridiculous and historic draft class. So, we're going to play this out. And I've established that I think there's a lot of talent in this draft. I really do. And for the weeks leading up to this, as excited I've been about the Browns with these 5 picks in the top 104, I do wonder is if the Browns are going to have to move up from 33. And even that's why I kind of suggest, maybe the trade back from 2 to accumulate a little bit more assets. Hopefully get your guy and then maybe make the trade up from 33 a little bit, more, palatable, so to speak. But, if you got to trade up from 33 and, you didn't trade back from 2, all of a sudden 5 picks in the top 104 probably turns to 4 in the top 104. But the last 2 of those would be 94 and 104. And then all of a sudden what you look like the ability was and the opportunity was to get this absolute monster haul, all of a sudden no longer is there. And, again, not ideal. And we'll see the way it all plays out. But this is, kind of just where it is. Certainly fascinated to see the way this all plays out. There's certainly a lot of scenarios where this can really work for the Cleveland Browns. Certainly some scenarios where this may not work out for the Cleveland Browns. But either way, we're going to all have you covered all the way through it. Certainly, streaming all throughout the entire draft, of course. So everybody, make sure you join us for that. Make sure you just stay coming out every day, reading the written content, coming out at night for the streaming content here. The OBR certainly on YouTube, the OBR certainly on Twitch. We appreciate all the support as always. Brown's 3D on the OBR has been brought to you by State Sharpening Mower Sales and Service. This has been your daily delivery of all things dog pound. Brown's 3D on the OBR, and we will talk to y'all tomorrow.